It was hell. Development hell. They gave up on that film they were making for at least 4 or 5 years. It was October 16th, 1991, and they had enough of making this film. Chris worked for Disney's production team, and they worked on a film called Jack and the Curse. The film was unfinished and undone since that very day. Chris was tired as hell while making the film. Notes all over since the beginning of the film. Disney wanted this movie to be very dark. They wanted their first animated film marketed towards adults. Yes, you heard it. Disney that time wanted to make more unique and wanted to be more unique and new. Before Pirates of the Caribbean, which they in fact marketed their film to a PG-13 film movie, they wanted an R-rated Disney animated film with dark and disturbing material added into the film. Because after The Little Mermaid, they had enough of making kids' movies for years, and most of their audience who watched earlier Disney films back in the 1940s and 1970s are now grown up and maybe even enjoy adult films more than kids' films. John Musker and the Disney production team preferred their own film instead. They had an idea of an animated film that centers on characters getting injured or even killed in one of the most horrendous ways you can ever even imagine. This couldn't apply with the rest of the characters, but they didn't agree to kill the main character, just only a few. But other ideas were flowing too. One idea was that our main character, Jack, and who was an 18-year-old boy, who wore a gray long-sleeve shirt and black jeans, brown moppy hair, and green eyes, getting viciously mauled to death by an alligator at the end of the film. But that idea was too confusing. The film's production was an absolute nightmare. Each day or week, it took like 10 hours for the production, and all that other stuff. One animator, Nolan West, almost died during the production of Jack and the Curse. If you're wondering if this is some sort of beta version of Pirates of the Caribbean, you're wrong. Because just because it has the name Jack and the word curse doesn't mean it's about pirates. Chris was one of the people who watched the 62-minute reel of the project along with some other staff members for Disney, especially some very unsettling elements to the film and why it was lost. Disney was a company for family-friendly films. They abandoned the project for two reasons: what I just said, and the other because they gave up on it. During the brainstorm session, one of the members brainstormed ideas. One idea was a man who was a perverted weirdo who would watch women and go on his daily life, just like Ralph Bakshi's Fritz the Cat. The second idea was a film about a serial killer. Now, these two ideas were scrapped in the process, but the third idea was what got to them. The third idea was about four college students apparently going outside. They found an interesting sight, but they found some TV and bring it home. But little did you know, what played on the television was a curse that led them through their tragic fates. They had the idea of the characters being college students rather than juveniles because it would be way too far, and remember, this isn't a PSA or anything. Just some films showing a bunch of college students going around the age of 18 or 19 getting slaughtered in some horrendous ways. I can agree with them not adding children to their films at all. Disney's production team went through a lot of pressure to make this flick. It was never simple to make the very first adult animated Disney feature and would take them a while. The script writing, storyboard art, and much more is what puts them to a lot of stress. This led to some of the animators going on a 6-month hiatus for this film and worked hard on it. But they would then unfortunately give up on it. October 18th, 1991, and here's the part where Chris went to the auditorium room to watch the reel along with 6 or 7 staff members. Like I said, it was around 62 minutes long and depicted some really disturbing scenes of death of characters. The movie starts out with Jack, an 18-year-old college student living in Iowa and hanging out with his friends Susan, Henry, and Joe. The 4 friends talked about what seems to be sex, drugs, and alcohol. They swore and mentioned one of the students that was called the N-word many times, and even said it with the hard R. Jack, Susan, Henry, and Joe were all bored and not much to do since. They talked and they went to the bar. The bar was, well, dirty and pretty messy looking. It was full of drunk people and actual audio was inside the bar. A game of pool, people talking and chatting. Jack sat at the table and had a few drinks. Same with his friends, and they would end up being drunk except for Joe. Joe would drive the car while everyone was absolutely drunk. They then all pass out while Joe is smoking a cigarette. After that scene, it cuts to Joe calling his friends to hang out again to go on an adventure to the woods during that day. Cuts to Joe hanging out with Jack, Henry, and Susan, going on a scavenger hunt for some secret items hiding around their area. Henry would eventually find some money hidden under some dirt. Susan finds a toy truck so she can collect it. They go back home for the night, and that cuts to Henry having dinner. Disney for sure wanted to make this film dark and mature as possible, but their purpose was Jack and the Curse. But anyway, the scene cuts back to Henry having dinner, and what he ate was beef and gravy. One of the audiences in the auditorium joked that he ate shit for dinner. Chris didn't care about the joke about Henry eating shit for dinner, so he continued watching the unfinished picture. As a couple minutes in, cuts back to Jack having a dream of himself getting mauled to death by a lion while falling into a zoo pit. He woke up scared shitless. Then at the same exact audience laughed, thinking Jack getting mauled to death is funny. He sure did have an odd sense of humor, but Chris yet again ignores the man laughing. Few minutes in, Jack calms down. He woke up for breakfast and drove to the arcade room. The arcade room was pretty neat looking and looked a lot better than the bar. It was full of kids and all that other stuff. Jack played a few games and had some little fun with it as well. The next scene cuts to Jack meeting up with Susan, Henry, and Joe, who were about to go scavenger hunting again. Ugh, scavenger hunting, said Joe, while getting bored. They go out again and find some hidden things scattered around the woods. That was until one of the friends finds a TV and this gives them their excitement. A free television, I see, said Joe. They couldn't wait to watch something on that television, so they brought the television at home and began to watch it. The audience were looking forward to this scene that Chris was pretty anxious for. Why is that? You'll see later on. Jack brings the television into this house for his three friends to pretty much watch, but what they're going to view is something disturbing. They turned on the television, and the four friends watched. What they were watching was something unorthodox. Apparently a face appearing on the screen, and there was no audio. There was audio recording of somebody talking about somebody dying in a muffled voice. Then the audio recording switched to a scream, and the TV turns off. The friends don't know what it is, and they ignore. However, things get dark because all the four friends die in some more disturbing and horrible ways. Joe is the one that gets to die first. The scene shows him running towards a path, and all of a sudden he passes out on a railroad track. This led a train to come to hit him off screen. We could see him wake up for a second before the scene cuts to Henry in his house. He is in the room watching television. He leaves the house to go to the lake and arrives pretty shortly. After a few minutes of swimming, what happened next was him being pulled a little bit, but this would eventually drag him deeper in the lake, and he would eventually drown to death. Another audience member laughs at him hysterically, like it's some sort of joke for him to die. He wasn't going absolutely insane and berserk, but rather laughing like it's some sort of funny joke. Chris gets pretty annoyed and well creeped out by the film. The next death is Susan. She is sitting on a bed coughing out what seems to be blood. She coughs even more and screams in horror. She coughs and coughs until she eventually die. Her dead body lies on the bed and blood runs down her mouth from all that coughing. The last death is, of course, Jack. Jack drove his car and got out of the vehicle. Things, however, do get intense, because Jack looks at his skin to see that he's been infected by the Black Death. He sees the tip of the fingers and dies slow, painful death days later. The movie would end there, unfortunately. No one had a reaction besides one of the men laughing at the auditorium due to the death of the four college students. Chris walked out as well with no reaction. There was also more added to the script that wasn't added in the film. There was originally going to be different ways the character would die. For example, Jack would have died from another sickness, and Jack Mothers would die as well from getting hit by a face in the brick. The company has many other gruesome ideas on other scenes, plots, many other scenes of the plot. The film ended with the scene of the tombstones of the four characters that died. A day later, the studio gave up on the film. It was years making it, and they wanted it to stop. They regret it. Their film wasn't too good, and besides, they were a family-friendly company. Chris left the studio back in 1994 and have seen the film, some sort of screwed-up film that features characters dying from a curse that was featured from a television video. The unfinished video remains lost to this very day and won't be made public for the rest of time. It's a secret film made by Disney for themselves.